Your Royal Highness, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen, my question relates to the Grand National. My question is, how do we best balance protecting horse welfare with maintaining the excitement of the Grand National?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think there's only one man who can actually start that ball rolling. Paul.
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Martin used the words practitioner and expert in his opening address, and I should just clarify for the forum that I'm neither of those from a horse perspective, and nor am I a Lancastrian, obviously. But I'm not a vet, I'm not a horseman, but I am in charge of the running of a business, the oversight of the governance and regulation of British horse racing, and obviously we have the welfare of the horse at the heart of everything we do. So in respect to the Grand National, I think that's actually one of the probably more sensible and well-structured questions on the Grand National that I've received in the past 12 months, and the important point there is the word balance. As far as the Grand National goes, everyone knows it's an iconic event, so our challenge is our priority around welfare for both our human and equine participants. How do we ensure and prioritise welfare, but at the same time maintain the traditions and the iconic status of what really is a global event? I mean, this is an event that is watched by over 600 million people worldwide each year. And part of its appeal, indeed a large part of its appeal, is that it's probably the ultimate test in terms of horse racing. So it's a really challenging balance for us to get right. We take note and we take seriously our relationships with what I'd call credible welfare bodies, and would certainly include World Horse Welfare and the RSPCA in that group. Our discussions with them specific to the Grand National are around potentially things like, you need to note that Aintree have spent over £250,000 in the last 12 to 18 months on irrigation to get the surface right, to ensure that the speed of the race is conducted in an appropriate way. And really, the way that we approach it is very much fact-based. So people will have views that either the field size is too big, or that Beecher's Brook, the most famous of all the obstacles at Aintree, is too dangerous. The facts simply don't bear that out. We obviously have had some high-profile incidents in the last couple of years. We continue to take steps in terms of our processes. We put in place a cool-down and assessment area post-race this year, which worked very effectively and we received hugely positive feedback on. We're working on a new jumps design for the obstacles, because there is a concern that at the heart of some of the obstacles they're too firm for the horses. But ultimately, despite a lot of the concerns within the community about the Grand National, the stats over the last few years have shown that more people go through the gate, more people have watched it on TV, and it remains by far and away the most popular betting race of the year. As I said, it's an iconic event. It's a huge challenge for us to get right, and the challenge for us is about protecting its iconic status, but at the same time having a priority for welfare, and that's both human and equine.
Thank you, Paul. It's always a fine, tight line, isn't it, a dividing line between one and the other. I'm going to ask Lucy to follow on from that, if you don't mind.
Yes, well, it obviously is a hugely iconic event, but the fact of the matter is that it has come under massive public scrutiny, and many of us in the horse world would hate to see it become another steeplechase, and you've referred to that fact that the sort of character of the race, it's very important to retain that. Ideas, it's very interesting to hear you mention fence design. Other people have questioned whether it is time to shrink the field very slightly. I'm sure these are all issues you're looking at, and whether the width of the fences should be made a little narrower so horses can run out of the race a bit sooner, so the loose horse issue becomes a little less potent. But an interesting point was made by Richard Dunwoody. He wrote a comment for Horse and Hound after the last Grand National, which no one can do much about, but he made the comment that he felt that the sort of thoroughbred running in the Grand National was perhaps less robust than the stamp of horse 20 years ago, 15 years ago when he was race riding, because of breeding trends, which is a really interesting point, because nothing you do with the course, the fences, the management of the race can counterbalance that. So it's all really interesting. I don't envy you finding the solution, but I really hope you do.
Thank you. And if I can just say, that is a really interesting point. We have seen, as we've made investment in the Grand National in terms of prize money, a better horse, a better class of horse go towards the Grand National. And actually, as a result, the race is potentially run a little bit quicker. And the old style of horse from 30 or 40 years ago, the old chaser, is not effectively getting into the race. And that's a balance for us about having the best field, attracting the best horses, but at the same time, not perhaps having some of the plotters that used to go around 30 or 40 years ago. I'm not sure if that's a British word, but it's definitely an Australian one.
Anne, would you like to?
Yeah, slightly discordant note. I am not comfortable watching the Grand National as it is at present. In fact, I'm longing for it to be over. And I don't wear, Paul, your point about the large numbers of people who go and want to watch it, because I suspect if you put on Christians and lions fighting one another, you'd double that number. But I do want to see the Grand National continue. I love steeplechasing, I love flat racing. But what is different about the Grand National has been, in previous years recently, I think, is this. Any risk sport, there's a risk that a horse may be killed or may be injured. And you have to balance that. But when it comes to the National and you switch on your television, you sit down to watch it, you know that's going to happen. And that's gone too far the other way. I mean, I do think that the present regime at Aintree, together with the welfare bodies, are doing a fantastic job at looking at every single detail. And I know this time they are moving the start, they've altered some of the drops, they are doing their best with, as you said, with the watering. I still think you need to look at numbers, even though I'm told that most of the falls happen when there are only about 17 horses still going round. I think you need to look because horses are being brought down because they can't see where they're going. And they're doing that because they're bunching on the inside. Now, I don't know how you do it, but I do know that there are people there who very much want to keep this race going, as we all do. And I think the important thing is we don't just close our ears and say it's perfectly all right as it is, it's a risk sport and that's that. And I'm very, very pleased that racing is not doing that and is looking at the problems. Because I'm not alone. I know a lot of people who love their steeplechasing but say, even if I had a horse that was suitable, I wouldn't run it. Now, there's something wrong when people feel like that and when people like me approach Aintree with trepidation.
I think we all feel that. Paul, you're stating that you're going to be looking at it and looking at it on a constant basis, not just as a one-off. So, I mean, I think we won't have the solution here, but certainly I think we're going to throw it out to the audience, hopefully, if Will's succinct and gives us a minute answer.
Thank you, Rowley, for ringing me up and asking whether I'd asked some questions on the Olympics. This is not about the Olympics. I think the important thing with the Grand National is not to take 1 or 2 years in isolation, which it's very easy to do in a race that has such high publicity. If there was an easy answer, then I know they would have done it. I mean, the number of experts from outside racing, whether it's Mike Everington-Smith from the course building world, Yogi Bryson, who I know is in racing but also in eventing, that have been there and worked with Aintree. They've looked at everything, and I think we mustn't take it in isolation. It is very important not to change the character of the race. I love watching the Grand National, adore the race. And I think we have to accept that there is, in any sport, any horse sport, when horses gallop and jump, there is a danger. I do think that we have to be careful that we do not allow the race to become faster through less horses and easier fences, which to me is bound to create more trouble. And I'm always reminded of the words of Marge Comerford, who was a great eventing lady, who, whenever she walked a course with me as a steward, said, make sure the third fence is bolt upright, it will make them sit up and think about what they're doing. And maybe there's an element of that in the Grand National, that if you make it too easy, then you do change the character of the race. It becomes even faster, and that causes more trouble. But I think that those of us that are embedded in the sport of horses, we need to take a longer view and not just react over 1 or 2 years.
Thanks, Will. Right, we've got, I think, time for one question or one solution to all of this. Who's brave enough? You, sir. If we just wait for the microphone, so...
I think I might almost know what the question is.
You don't have to worry, Paul. David Muir-Aquan, consultant, RSPCA. I have been working at the Grand National for many, many years. And the lady that spoke just before was absolutely right in everything she said. What we're asking, is there 40 horses that have the capability to go over 4.5 miles, over 30 large jumps, and be in contention at the end of the race? That is the crux of the matter. Have we got that number of horses? Because it seems to me that we put 40 horses in to finish up with 8 or 9. I would love to see a Grand National. I enjoy national hunt racing. Like the lady, I'm full of trepidation when I go there, but I would like to see more horses in contention, negotiating fences safely. Because over the last few years throughout Britain, race courses are making jumps softer. Aintree were behind the action, and they still had the core issues, and those core issues are still causing problems. But thankfully, you have been listening to us. You've been listening to both World Horse Welfare, ourselves, and other people, and are reacting to it. Let's hope that what you do is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. It wasn't exactly a question in there, but I would like to respond, primarily because I think David does have great empathy for what we're trying to do, and one of the reasons that we have such a constructive, I won't use the word cosy, but we have a constructive relationship with World Horse Welfare and the RSPCA is because of some of the relationships that exist. We are making modifications to the race off the back of both the direct dialogue and consultation with those groups, as well as our own facts and data. And I guess our commitment to this room is that obviously it's a huge commercial driver for our sport, but our priority associated with welfare, both equine and human, would override any commercial considerations that we have.
You can't say fairer than that. Thank you very much indeed, Paul.